Sound sculpture like 60 years ago, in the 50s. So just talking about the genesis of the ideas of sound sculpture and their whole lifetime work, it can take me hours and days. But what I also like to explain is what we do from the point where we took it. We met Francois when he was 90. And we shared 5 years, his last 5 years of his life, which were amazing, like a third or fourth youth for him. And what we love from his work, it's the work itself, but it's also the possibilities and the chances that it brings to new generations. So I think I would just explain you as fast as I can their 60 years of career, and then if you want we can talk about what's next to be done or what are we planning to do. But it's good to know a little bit of the history, because the whole notion of sound sculpture includes science, physics, acoustics, and empiricism, and studying things and developing things, designing things in a thoughtful regarding the purpose, just like every good design should be. But at the same time, it includes the anthropological or sociological approach to the arts, let's say, which is the general purpose of what we do as artists or scientists. So I think that their work is been always a great metaphor for many other subjects and many other situations, because they've been dealing with many different challenges all at the time. They've been starting very amazing interdisciplinary work with all the challenges that this implies, because when you work on sound and you work on sculpture, for instance, people from the art world, they would say that they are not artists, they are like luthiers or instrument builders. And instrument builders, they would say, no, they are, like sculptors or whatever. So the more interdisciplinary you are, the harder it is to be considered as part of all of those fields. So when they make science, it's not science enough for scientists, and when they make art, it cannot be art enough for artists or whatever. So their whole lifetime story, it's great in many cases, and for like as I said, as a metaphor for many things. The genesis of that is also very valuable today, and it's linked to things that we were talking yesterday about designing futures or imagining the society or what technologies should be used for, whatever. So the thing is that both Bachet brothers, born in 1918 and 1920, they wanted to do creative things when they were young, but Second World War started. So they got involved in the French resistance against the Nazis. So they couldn't develop their own personal willings, but they have to resist and they had to fight Nazism. And after that, Francois had learned to speak Spanish and German, and he was recruited by the French intelligence, and he became a Nazi hunter in South America after the Second World War. So he was like a double agent, and he could pretend to be Spanish, Argentinian, Mexican, English. He had a very wonderful posh accent in which he could pretend to be like super British gentleman, whatever, and he could speak German. And so he had like, his life is something like really like a movie. You don't believe there's someone having this kind of life. So after this period, he decided to enjoy life, because he was in death threats in many cases. So when he finished this period as a spy or an intelligence agent, he became a traveler, and he traveled the world twice. He bought the longest trip ever sold by Pan American, and it was 2 times around the world. And he was traveling with a guitar, and he was using music as a means to communicate with people whom they could not have any common language, but he was using music as a way to get engaged with people and to know people and just to get somewhere to sleep or get someone to give him food or whatever. And he realized that a guitar is very useful for this purpose, but at the same time it's too big, too bulky to travel in, like be hiking or traveling by train or whatever. And he remembered some of the Asian instruments that has a membrane instead of a big box, and has a membrane as a sound radiator. And he thought about how to have tension on a membrane without having a heavy frame or rigid frame. And he came up with the idea of a balloon. So he invented this inflatable guitar, which had a balloon instead of a solid box. So he could deflate the balloon and fold the guitar in two, so it would just occupy the size of the neck, which is like a flute, in fact. So he kept traveling the world and playing music with his guitar and whatever. And when he came back to Paris, he found Bernard, who was very into experimental music. And he started studying acoustics because he wanted to understand what was happening with this balloon, why a balloon works that efficiently. And just to make it short, the thing is that they discovered that there were many, many great ideas discovered by scientists that were never being used in any musical instrument or any sound device. So there was knowledge available, but no one was using it. So they decided to merge all their interests, which was experimental music. The beginning of electroacoustic was at the late 40s and beginning of the 50s, which was recording sounds on tape and changing those sounds to create new sounds never heard. So they were very interested on that, and at the same time they were very interested in acoustics. So what they did was to start making these weird looking objects, which do not look like any known instrument, most of them, to allow people to enjoy this kind of new experimental sounds, but without the need of any tech involved. Because in the 50s, you could do some electroacoustics if you had like huge equipment, but most people couldn't do that at that time. And anyway, there was a big gap between experimental music and average population. So they conceived sound sculptures as a way to link or to fill this gap, to kind of like bridge the most contemporary, radical, avant-garde experimental music to make it available for people. And at the same time, they realized that electroacoustics, it was not even electronics, it wasn't even synthesis at that time. It lacked the pleasure of the sensitive relationship with objects and amongst people. So sound sculpture is also a mean to get people involved in the sensation of doing things, having the better feedback possible with objects and also with other people. So then they started focusing not only in making sound sculptures or interactive installation. This was a fountain that you could trigger the sounds by shooting like water jets. So they were always looking for amusing or easy ways to engage people into doing stuff without having to know any music at all or needing no technique. I mean, playing a violin requires a lot of technique to learn. None of their objects requires any technique at all. So the crystal bachet, for instance, we have one up there, which is in fact like a synthesizer, and you can play it with moistened fingers, and it sounds great to everyone. You don't need any technique. You just wet your hand, you just dip the hand in water, you rub it, and anyone has the same quality of sound. So you're already engaged into listening, into playing, with no previous knowledge required. You don't need to know music, you don't need to know any theory at all. But it's a great way to start people being engaged and then asking questions. It's like why this works, so you get them involved into empiricism, physics, mechanics, whatever. Or what about this musical scale? What about this whatever, so you get them engaged into aesthetics, into history of music, whatever. But even if you don't, even if many people do not ask or go further into the knowledge, at least they are being amused. They are enjoying. They feel that they also have this opportunity to. They are allowed. So one of their major contributions is the acoustic system that they develop, that allows us to keep inventing stuff. But they also took a very risky step, which was changing the logic of the museum. So they were the first to change the motto, which was like, do not touch. They swap it, and it was please play. So this playful approach, it was very inclusive and trying to break the elitism in the art world. So it was always a success. They've been in MoMA, Guggenheim, Osaka Expo 1970. They've been at probably every major museum in Europe and the United States. They've been touring all around the world. And it was a great success because everyone liked it. Children, elder people, specialists, and very skilled and famous musicians. They had collaborations with very important people at the time. But at the same time, they started programs like this one at the Harlem, trying to avoid social exclusion of black children in Harlem. So they were more and more engaged into social approach of art and knowledge. And this is probably why they are not better known nowadays, because they finally you're facing something which is which puts in danger the elitism and the role of the specialist. When you have an interactive installation or exhibition and everyone is allowed, and you are saying that everyone has the equal right to play with that, and the object is no longer something to be admired but something to be used, and the phenomena, the interesting phenomena is not the object but what people does with that, then what is the role of the specialist? The specialist, we have to change our position and we have to help and guide people but not tell people what to do. And we can try to teach people, but depending on their questions, not depending on what I know. So when we are out there now with the sound sculptures and you ask us for something, if we don't know, we just have to admit we don't know that. So they went into a very Socratic position, which is like, we allow things to happen and we devote to pedagogy and to knowledge transfer. And that was a very risky position on their side, that on one side allows us to go on making great things, but on the other side the museum stopped being really interested in that, because it made them work a lot. I mean, the museology for interactive installations is something that the scholars haven't really thought about that yet. Like, what about the maintenance of those stuff? What about the insurances? What if something breaks? I mean, nowadays the original Bachet sound sculptures are really, I mean, the prices has gone really higher now that they're both dead. And but if something breaks, I can just fix it, because I was working with Francois, and everyone can fix that. And they wrote books about how to do that and how to fix it. So the idea is that their work is just tools. So if something is broken, you just fix it. It's not super worthy. But museums haven't taken this path yet. So they have a piece of the Bachet and they lock it behind a glass showcase. So you're killing the thing. It's like a mummy. But we want those things to be alive. So nowadays we're facing all those conservational and museology issues. But at the same time we are developing their ideas, because they have been telling us how matter and shape interacts in order to create sound. And that's what we're doing. So it happened that, well, I made my PhD on the physics of that, which is available on internet. We reissued this book in English and Spanish, because Francois and us, we want everyone to to have access to the knowledge and do whatever they want. So what we are doing, and there's no images here, but I have this with some images that you can check, is that we went on taking care of the exhibitions, building new stuff, inventing new instruments and new sounds and new devices, which are not even instruments, are again objects that people use to do whatever it's needed. It's just enjoying sound. You don't, if you want to play music, you play music. If you just make boom and you're amazed, that's already something very interesting. You're not annoying, you're not bothering anyone, you're not making war, you're not speculating with someone else's money, you're just having a nice time in your life. And sound, everyone enjoys sound. So this is the contribution. So what's very interesting to us is when we teach people how to make stuff, and we teach children how to make stuff, we teach musicians how to make stuff, we introduce people from sculpture or fine arts to know more about music, know more about science and whatever. So this is the beautiful challenge that we have now. And I don't know, we just discovered something like this, for instance, which no science book told us that it was possible. But that thanks to the intellectual system developed by the Bashir, we gained this consciousness about the fact that there are many things to be explored in acoustics just by studying the relationship of shape and matter and energy, actions. And there's many things to be discovered yet. It seems like the rise of electronics and digital world kind of like made us forget about the fact that physics is still a big field of discovery. And the fact that someone like me with no science background, further from like regular secondary education, but then I studied music and arts, but I'm discovering things that my friends physicists, they cannot imagine until they see it. When they see it, they can describe it, but they are not asking the right questions because they don't have the need to create anything. So as a metaphor, it's beautiful because whatever we do, whatever we discover, we can share it with other people, and there's many ways to make evolution advance. So we can engage scientists to be more creative in some ways, and we can engage creative people to be more empirical and less esoterical somehow, without denying the fact that when you listen to sound, there's something kind of like even supernatural to this. I mean, this is super simple stuff. Now that we have this, we can describe it, but when I was studying about tuning forks, you can have like 2 pages with everything known written there. That's everything there is. And it's not true. Just by changing the proportions, we find something which is directional, which is idiophonical. You know, tuning forks normally they do not sound. You need to transfer the energy from the tuning fork to something else, to the sounding boards of the guitar, whatever. So this is feasible, but no one had thought about that. So when I had this done, I was invited to LA to a very nice art studio called Metabolic Studio, and they had like several facilities. And one of the buildings was on one side of the road, and the railroad and the river, and the other building was on the other side. It was about like 120 meters apart, something like that. And they wanted to have a link between the buildings. So they asked me, do you think there's any sound way to link? And I thought, well, maybe. So we made those things this size, and just by making it like 5 times bigger, we have something which works just like this, which is also directional. You can feel how it's vibrating in this direction. But the big ones stands the sound still for a minute. And you can hear it 100 and something meters from there. So now I'm thinking about, what if I make it this size? How long will it sound? How directional will it be? Etc., etc., etc. So this is the simplest thing I can show you to prove that the claim that the Bachet made, which is acoustics can be phenomenal, can be still attractive, and we can discover stuff, it's real. I have no real background apart from studying the Bachet work, and we're discovering really amazing things that get people amazed, and they just have fun. And some of us, we want to engineer the thing and know more. So, well, it's a great pleasure for us to have the chance to do such things, and we need feedback. We need your feedback, because we are dealing with science, we're dealing with designing objects, but we are dealing with the social interaction with that. So working with children, working with elder people, working with general audiences, well, there's many things to be thought again, because reality changes, every country has different backgrounds, so you cannot do the same thing with every group and whatever, so feedback is great for that. And now that you know a little bit about that, you're invited to just enjoy the sounds out there, or ask me whatever you want to know about this thing, because I feel privileged to know all that I know from Bachet, and it's great for me to just share it with you. I don't know.
Thank you very much.
That's me. I mean, that's all. Okay. We have 5 more like this out there. We have a Bachet crystal, which is this kind of stuff that you can play with moistened fingers. We have another percussion, and there's work of them in many different countries, and we are trying to restore them. And we are doing it in Japan, we're doing it in Mexico, and we're starting doing it in the States. There is Bachet crystals in Israel.
What is that?
Which one? This one?
Yeah.
This is Japan 1970 Universal Exhibition, and we are restoring them. So this I can show you.
They look like satellite dishes.
Yeah, but it's just speakers. You know, a speaker is a cone, moving back and forward. So they just do that. I mean, it's the same geometry, not exactly the same geometry, but it's that. So you see, where's that? We have some pictures here.
Do you have that here? Those things over here?
We have 2 après Bachet, we call it après Bachet, which is after Bachet in French, and learn from Bachet in Catalan, après Bachet,
Okay.
which is kind of like a funny thing, but Francois liked it a lot. You know, like après Bachet, oh, it's like a license, you know, like we learn from you. So the things that I do is not the original Bachet, but we are the workshop that he created. So we want to preserve that stuff and pay respect to their scientific work. So this, après Bachet doesn't mean that it have nor to look like or to sound like, but it's the idea of inventing things, of doing research and then using the knowledge to give something nice to people. Let's say, like, use knowledge for something worthy, or at least think about this kind of stuff, like the impact that it can have. So, sorry, this was in Russia, and we made huge, this was 4 meter tall metal speaker. This is a crystal like the one you'll have out there, and 2 huge percussions that you can bow also. But this was with Francois and one of the crystals. Jordi is here now, out there. Jordi is waiting for you down there. This is Jordi who is outside. This is the university. This was Francois. But I was willing to show, this is in Mexico with some of my students now. They are restoring the pieces in Mexico after I've been there, and I made what I convinced the museum that they should restore it and make the sculpture available for people to play. This is a 4 meter one, big one. I mean, here the angular optic of the camera is not it's not showing the true scale of the thing. And this is in Barcelona, the university, where we have a collection of his pieces.
Have you managed to create any new sounds, completely new sounds?
Sorry?
Have you managed to create completely new sounds, like scales or?
Yeah, but here you see, this is a very interesting topic. What the new sound means. Like, a scale is a selection of tones. And there's many people in the 20th century working in alternative tuning. And there's thousands of different tunings The thing is that it's not mainstream. People are not used to listen to that. But for instance, gamelan music from Bali, it uses like 4 different scales, which is completely out of tune with our Western tunings. And our math say that this shouldn't sound right, but indeed it sounds great, and we love it. So the tunings that we use in the sound sculptures that we have out there is based on these Indonesian tunings, because we are mixing Indonesian tradition, which is collaborative playing, like the Chalaparta in the Basque country, but it's like interlocking patterns, and you can have like 20, 30 people playing together the same piece. So we are dealing with different kinds of intonations and tunings, but when we think about a sound, what a new sound would be, this is also hard to tell. We made things like this, that for me is a new sound, but in fact it's a very pure wave. But when you have this sound here, the air, the acoustics of the room is affecting the space, so this doesn't sound the same here or inside a cathedral or inside a little toilet, for instance. So the idea of if a sound is new or not, it's hard to tell, because sometimes the same source would generate different sound response. But it always depends on the listener. You know, the wow effect, wow! It depends on the background of the listener. But we've been doing things that we believe that, to be new. These 2 are from Japan, 1970, and we restored them in collaboration with the Kyoto University, and now they are available for people to play. And Ruiz Sakamoto just released his last album after 8 years, and he's using them in 2 pieces. So we are super happy that we're having people like Ruiz Sakamoto using this, and children, the same sculptures. You know, like having a place in which you can have Ruiz Sakamoto and children, and everyone is allowed, and everyone has the equal right to use that thing. And of course Sakamoto will do something different from the children, but what the children do can be as interesting or enlightening or inspiring to me as you never know. So this is the shift of paradigm, when the author is no longer the center of the world, but the relationship established around sound. So, well, you see, I can talk for hours about that, but it's so beautiful, you know. It's when people just enjoy.
Do you do something with binaural sound?
Yeah.
Do you have something here in binaural?
We've recorded some of the stuff, because some of those you see, sorry, I can't help, you know, like this is great. These were nuns, you know, and they were 90 something, and they invited us to this festival, but taking place in this little village, and they offered us the church to install, so we installed. And we invite them, and they were, oh, it's great, because everything else was super techy, was everything, you know, like bits and digital stuff, and they didn't understood anything, they couldn't understand anything. And when we invited them, and they were, wow, you know, like playing synthesizers, and they were as amazed as us, and they were so happy, like, oh, how generous you are. So they said, no, I'm inviting everyone to do that thing. So this kind of phenomena are what we love. Regarding binaural stuff, when you have like several speakers, like in these cases, or one sculpture with several speakers, then you can have like stereo and different phenomena, and that depends also on the room. So we've been doing this kind of research. And I would just point another more thing related to what you said, which is neuroacoustics. There is a Japanese group of researchers called Yamashiro. Did you see like the 90-year-old nuns and the babies? You know, like everyone is having their own experience on that, and together, you know, like grandmas and granddaughters enjoying. And if what they do is music or not, who cares? I mean, who cares? We just have the chance to invite people, so we do. Yeah, so just let me finish with this. I think they're here. No? Well, anyway, yeah. So the Yamashiro Gumi Institute for Science and Culture is this institute in Japan. This is Shoji Yamashiro, who is nowadays like 90 something. They made the soundtrack for Akira. I don't know if you know this movie, like an anime movie from '89. And it was a great science fiction manga story. And they made a great soundtrack. But he is a biologist also. And they are an interdisciplinary group of research who deal with sound engineering and neuroacoustics and ethnomusicology, and so they travel the world, they learn about every music culture they can learn, and they have a huge non-professional amateur orchestra with a big choir, and they play any kinds of music. And they were studying gamelan music, and they discovered that, gamelan is bronze gongs and bronze plates, like xylophones, but everything is in bronze. So when you have the whole entire orchestra sounding, the accumulation of overtones creates hypersonic frequencies. What does it mean? Our hearing range goes from 20 hertz, 20 oscillations per second, which is the lowest vibration we can perceive as tone. Lower than that, it's seismical, it's tactile. So from 20 to 20,000 vibrations per second. This is the average range. Okay? It can be like less than that. Okay? But the highest frequency you can hear is 20,000 ideally. Normally it's like 14,000, 15,000. Okay. But in gamelan, you get way higher frequencies than that, like 50,000 hertz, 60,000 hertz, 80,000 hertz vibrations per second, which is no longer audible. Your perceptual system is not prepared to perceive that as sound, but they've been performing, and they did their experiments and publishing their results in the American Journal of Neuropsychology, I think it's called. And they discovered that all those hypersonic frequencies have real impact in your brain and in the way that the brain behaves. So some regions of the brain get stimulated by that, and it behaves like if you have been meditating for years, and blood flow and everything changes, and it brings some kind of like contemplative state of perception. And that just happens in gamelan music and in rainforests. So rainforest, with all the humidity and all the reflectors, all the surfaces and all these little sounds, crickets and whatever, and insects creating high-pitched sounds, and birds and all that stuff, all the accumulation of sounds also create this hypersonic range of... And their theory is that humanity evolved in this kind of medium, and our brain is ready to be healed or kind of like fine-tuned by this phenomenon, by hypersonic frequencies. So what we've been doing with that, and this for me is more interesting than binaural itself, is what is happening in our brain when we are bombarded by frequencies that we cannot listen to, but it affects the quality of the experience. So we contacted them, they were fans of the Bachet, and they agreed to collaborate with us immediately, and we managed to bring them to Barcelona and to bring them to Paris. We started doing research on the Bachet stuff, because I saw with my equipment, I can see that some of the Bachet sound sculptures go beyond 48,000 hertz. So this is already hypersonic, but I wanted to know how high it can be. But I don't have the equipment, because regular microphones do not record that high. I mean, why would you record that high? And we find out that some of the Bachet sound sculptures go up to 160,000 kilohertz, hertz. So 160 kilohertz, which is way more hypersonic than any gamelan or rainforest. So now we have a big field of research, because what they studied is that the hypersonic response is healthy, and that's when you are listening to that stuff. But can you imagine what is happening to your brain when it's yourself who is generating that sound, and it's that feedback between what you hear and what you're doing with your hands and you feel with your hands? The systems of feedback in your brain with what is happening, it's something really beneficial, probably. So this is the kind of research that me, as an artist, I find myself involved. I have no idea on neuroacoustics, but I think that's worthy. Claiming or paying attention, trying to do science, pay attention to acoustics and to art. I mean, art is not just something to amuse, but it can happen to be healthy. So this is...
del registre i la gràcia és que es posin 3 o 4 persones i ajustar-ho, vagin el concepte d'aquests instruments és que la gent que no entén idea de música al principi que has parlat de la banqueta que també som els més curts i els pots fer ritmes més encara que potser visualment no tingui diguem-ne l'elegància o perquè, hòstia, ells han treballat moltíssim. Hi ha una estilització que no és estètica, és a dir, és funcional. És a dir, quan la cosa funciona bé, és bonica. És com les fulles dels arbres, és a dir, tenen una forma pel vent, la llum, no sé què, però la funció crea una forma preciosa, no? Doncs, a banda d'això, quan els nanos foten coses, encara que no siguin... Hòstia, té un valor tan increïble, no sé que ho hagin fet ells, i que entenguin coses una mica de manualitats, diguem, no? De pretecnologia. Hòstia, que per mi és... no sé com interessament, per aquests mons. Perquè sí. Això, el moment aquest...
Y te especificas mucho, porque yo creo que hoy desarrollarle diferentes partes del cerebro es importante hasta que tengas al menos 18 años, con estos actores cosas muy diferentes y hacer acciones que lo que es esa niñez que le
Ara farem un vídeo de l'Ariadna fent això. Ho penjarem a l'Instagram. Ai, vídeo.
I va explicant fins que acaba... Sí, aquest feia...
Entenc que això és...